Vrindavan. Puryam kadachit kridadhabir yaduboja kumarke kopita munaya shepur Bhagavan Mata Kovidha Puryam Kadachit Kridhabir Yadu Boja Kumarate Kopita Munaya Sepur Bhagavan Mata Kovidha Puryam Kadachit Kridhabir Yadu Boja Kumarake Kopita Munaya Sepur Bhagavan Mata Kovidha Puryam, in the city of Dwarka, Kadachit, once upon a time, Vridhabi, by sporting activities, Yadu, descendants of Yadu, Boja, descendants of Boja, Kumarake, princes, Kopita, became angry, Munaya, the great sages, Shepu, cursed, Bhagavat, the personality of Godhead, Mata, desire, Kovida, cognizant. Translation: once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activities of the princely descendants of the Yadus and the Bhoja dynasties, and thus, as desired by the Lord, the sages cursed them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The associates of the Lord who are playing the part of princely descendants of the Yadu Bhoji dynasties were not ordinary living entities. It is not possible that they could offend any saintly man or sage, nor could the sages, who are all pure devotees of the Lord, be influenced to anger by any of the sporting activities of the princes born in the holy dynasties of Yadu Bhoja, wherein the Lord himself appeared as a descendant. The cursing of the princes by the sages was another transcendental pastime of the Lord to make a show of anger. The princes were cursed in order that one may know that even the descendants of the Lord, who could never be vanquished by any material nature, were subject to the reactions of anger by great devotees of the Lord. One should therefore take great care and attention not to commit an offense at the feet of a devotee of the Lord. The last sentence is the poignant sentence in this purport. Om Agyanatimirandasya Jananjala Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Durga Me Parimendasya Skalapatirgati Muhu Swakripayu Sudanana Shanta Shanta Valambanam. So, we are continuing with the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan, and Lord of us speaking this to Vidura, and is just about to bring these pastimes of Krishna to a conclusion. So this is the final chapter of the Dwarka dynasty. So we have been listening to the last few verses where the Yadu dynasty has been residing in a city that was built magnificently for Krishna, for all the residents to reside off the mainland, so the demons would not be able to attack them. Demons such as Selva still did manage to attack Dwarka with his mystical spaceship, his Vimana, flying saucer. But normally there was safety there. So after a period of like 100 years, the pastimes were coming to an end. Krishna's pastimes on this planet was coming to an end, and he had a city full of his descendants and other relatives of the Kuru dynasty, and a lot of them were Kshatriyas, very, very powerful Kshatriyas. And one of Krishna's purposes, as he says in the Bhagavad Gita, Pritranaya sadanam vinasya cha duskritam dharma samstapaye sambhavani yuge, that I have come here to annihilate the miscreants and to re-establish religious principles. And a part of this task of Krishna was to rid the earth of a lot of unwanted armies. Now, the influence of Kali Yuga was soon coming upon the whole population, and as we can see that the army was getting a little bit restless, like the princes, they were being capricious, and they were great souls, as Srila Prabhupada points out. The Yadu dynasty were demigods that took birth, or performed some pious activities to actually get the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna and Dwarka for such a long period of time. And also they were so attached that as soon as Krishna left Dwarka, then they would feel this drying up. And so Krishna was planning to put an end to his pastimes in Dwarka. So he had this great big army. They were his sons and grandsons, and they were quite powerful. In fact, they were quite strong because they didn't take part in the Kurukshetra war as all the armies did. So sort of the Earth planet was a little bit leveled out as far as the Varna ashram goes, that there was a balance finally. Before Krishna came, there was a big overbalance of armies. And the Varna ashram is sometimes compared to the human body. So everything is in balance. The Brahmanas are the head, the Kshatriyas are like the shoulders and arms, the Vaishyas are the stomach, and the Sudras, the working classes, are the legs. So if everything is in proportion, so we have a nice physical body, but sometimes the body gets out of proportion, and you can compare it like when the Kshatriyas, they become very, very strong, that the shoulders and arms becomes very strong. Sometimes the head gets smaller and the stomach becomes weak, and the legs get weaker also, so the body goes out of proportion. Or if there's a lot of Vaishyas who actually dominate the society, what happens then? The belly becomes big, overweight, big belly, right? Big belly, small shoulders, small legs, and you've got a disease, right? That's a really set up to get sick. So a healthy society is like that. So this was Krishna's plan, and once again, whenever Krishna had a plan for this material universe, who would take part in the plan? His great servant, Narad Muni. He always seems to be figuring in all the chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam that he's weaving his way in and out. So Narad was there from the beginning to the end. So the demise of the Yadu dynasty has already been spoken about by Ramai Maharaj a couple of weeks ago, and then Mukunda Maharaj also alluded to it, some of the details as to how it all wound up, but not so much concentrating on that. I just want to concentrate on one central figure that caused all this to happen. Sometimes we haven't put this personality together that he's mentioned in a couple of chapters of the Bhagavatam, and this is Samba. So the sloka is actually quite a general one, just the princes were sporting and they were trying to play a trick on the Moonies. So, yeah, we move over, but actually I just read the names of the Moonies. This is what brought my attention, or as we call them, sages in English, so sages. But we've got Dasa Muni, we have Mara Muni, we have Vasista Muni, we have Atri, we have Kapila, amongst others. And I go, hey, wait a minute, let's backtrack a bit. These are not sages, they're the rock foundations of the whole principles of, society, of the whole universe, going back, way back, even to the beginning of Lord Brahma. So these are powerful. So why would some young boys want to play a trick on, like these Moonies? If you take one look at them, they look ferocious. You look at Devasa Muni, and he's been performing all these austerities, and he'll burn you to ashes. So these princes are all dressing up and, saying, hey, this girl is pregnant. Can you tell whether it's a boy or girl? It was maybe they didn't think it through or something. But then let's have a look at the principal pranksters, and it happens to be Samba. He's the one that could put up the front. So I researched Samba a little bit. Where does he come from? And it just so happens, you probably all know this story, but Krishna, amongst his principal queens, one of his queens was Jambavati, daughter of Jambavan, who is going back a long time, one of the great servants of Lord Ram, another great Leela where Krishna fought with Jambavan for so many days, but that was just a sporting activity because Jambavan was his devotee, and Jambavan offered his daughter Jambavati. Jambavati was the last one to have children. All the other 8 principal wives were having children, and Jambavati wasn't becoming pregnant. So Krishna, he actually went away. He went to an ashram and he performed austerities. So I've got the name of it. He went to ashram in Upamanyu forest and he meditated on Lord Shiva. Said for quite a period, some say about 6 months, and he was meditating on the male child. So Lord Shiva appeared with Parvati, and Krishna asked him for the boon that if he could have a child that had Lord Shiva's attributes, right? So one of Lord Shiva's attributes is in charge of destruction. So Lord Krishna was wanting someone for his Leela that would facilitate in the service of the destruction or the winding up of the Yadu dynasty. So when he came back, Jambavati was impregnated and Samba was born. So Samba is the name of Lord Shiva. It's one of Lord Shiva's names. Actually, it's quite an interesting name where Lord Shiva is half male, half female. I don't know very much about that incarnation, so I won't, the incarnation of Lord Shiva, so I won't dwell on it. But that is Samba, and right from the beginning, Samba was a capricious child. He was naughty, right? So we can say that, okay, Krishna was naughty also. He used to steal the butter and annoy all the all the gopis, and play tricks on the elderly gopas, and play tricks on the gopis and the cowherd boys. And even Lord Chaitanya incarnation, we like to read about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes where he dive in the water and pull the Brahmins underneath while they were saying the Gayatri and saying the mantra in the river, and then argue with all it's just this pastime. So a little bit of capriciousness. So Samba also, he got into a lot of trouble. It was more than that. He was sinister. The Puranas speak a little bit about his activities, but there's no mention of them in the Bhagavatam apart from these incidents I'm going to narrate. So I'll just stick to the pastimes of the Bhagavatam. But after a period of time, Samba was taken under his wing by Lord Balaram, who's living in Dwarka. And Lord Balaram, being Krishna's brother and being very, very adept at fighting with a club, showed him how to fight with a club. Samba was a very, very willing student. He was a beautiful looking boy. He looked like his father and had a lot of his father's good qualities, and he was a great Kshatriya. So after a period of time, Krishna sent him to Indraprastha. Who lived at Indraprastha? The Pandavas, Arjuna and Yudhisthira and the 500 had a beautiful city called Indraprastha there. And then he took shelter of Arjuna, who showed him all the skills of weaponry, of fighting, of being a bowman. In those days, a bowman was a very expert bowman, would be called a Rati or a Adirati or a Maharati. And a Maharati could fight with 1,000 soldiers, even more, up to 10,000 soldiers, right? And defeat them just by the prowess of his bow and chanting mantras behind the arrows and having so much different potencies, mystic potencies behind the arrows that he could defeat all these soldiers. So Samba, he became a very expert bowman and he became a Maharati. So he was there in Indraprastha all the way through. When we spoke about the Rajasuya sacrifice a couple of weeks ago, he was there for the Rajasuya sacrifice. And then the Bhagavatam talks about Samba hearing about Duryodhana offering his daughter in marriage in a Swayamvar. Now, this particular Swayamvar ceremony was that the bride could pick her own husband. So Duryodhana, not being very friendly with the Pandavas, did not invite any of the princes from the Pandavas, nor did he invite the Yadus. So he was just there. All the people he wanted to invite were there. So Samba went along anyway, and he was in the audience. And he didn't wait for the Swayamvara, he just kidnapped the princess, whose name was Lakshmana, and took her away in front of everybody. Like, he was a Maharati, but there was, like, when you mention names like Bhisma and Drona and Karna and Salya and Bhurishwara and Duryodhana, these are all Maharatis too. How would this impetuous young prince want to capture a princess in front of all these guys? It's like you think, well, you actually, didn't do the maths. You might say 6 to 1 is not good maths. So anyway, he did it, and he took off with the princess, Lakshmana. And the kings Duryodhana becomes so enraged. Oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? She didn't even want to marry him. So they all went after Samba. So when they chased him down, he stood his ground. It said in the Bhagavatam, it says like he faced them like a lion faces his prey, a big roar, shoulders ready to fight with him. And he put up a great fight against 6 Maharatis. They didn't worry about one Maharati at a time. They took him on at once, which was not really the code of the Kshatriyas. But then he still dismantled their horses and filled them full of arrows and so on and so forth. But eventually they took out his horses, took out his charioteer, and one of them cut his bow. So once his bow was cut, and he was defenseless, so they captured him. And they took him back. They didn't want to kill him. They took him back to Hastinapur, and they kept him prisoner there, and they separated him from Lakshman. Now, Narad Muni happened to be there again, somehow or other, by accident or by fate. So he went and reported this incident to Dwarka. So he told Krishna and told Balaram. Balaram, being very affectionate to Samba, he decided to go there and sort all this out in Hastinapur. So he took a contingent of soldiers, he took some brahmanas, and they went over there in good cheer. And he camped by the river. The Yamuna. And when Duryodhana, of course, and Dhritarashtra heard of Balaram being outside, they were overjoyed because they were good friends. So they all went out to greet Balaram. It was all good. They were all dressing each other. How are you going? And asking about each other's welfare until Balaram came to the point while he was there, why he was there. He was saying that, well, we'd like you to give us Samba back and Lakshman back to free them up. They're part of our dynasty, and it's not right that they should be imprisoned. And actually, Balaram didn't mince his words. He was rather forceful. His tone offended Duryodhana. And even though Duryodhana he'd learnt the art of fighting of Balaram and so many things, but because of the nature of Duryodhana having this very, very envious nature, he began to recoil at the stinging words of Balaram, and he started to abuse Balaram, saying, "You Yadu dynasty, you've been supported by us, you're like the jackal stealing from a lion," and so on and so forth. He went on, and Balaram listened to everything he had to say. When he finished, Balaram just sort of, I don't know what colour he turned, but there's like smoke starting to come out his ears. He stood up, picked up his plough, got his plough and threw it into the ground, and he started to pull his plough away from Hastinapur. And then there was like a big gap, like when you have an earthquake, and sometimes you see there's a big chasm opens up. So he kept banging his plough into the ground, and Hastinapur was separated from the rest of the earth. And they couldn't do anything because Lord Balaram's like the supreme personality of Godhead, and this power, they were afraid to even look at him in case they were burnt to ashes. So he was separating, and he was pulling Hastinapur into the river. He was so mad he was just going to actually just pull the whole city into the river. That's at the end of that. So of course, the Duryodhana come to his senses, and they offered Lakshman, they offered Samba to him, and then pacified him. And then after he was pacified, they stayed in Hastinapur, and they had a big wedding ceremony, and Samba married Lakshman by the mercy of Balaram. So this is described in the Krishna book also. So somewhere along the line, the genealogy is very difficult for us to sort of make out where at what point of Samba's stage that this incident happened, where a lot of young princes were together, and these sages came to Dwarka, and they had a big offering for the benefit of the people. They made an offering for the benefit of the people, so they would continue to prosper in this particular age, and they paid the respects to Krishna. So they were residing in some forests there, and the princely sons, they thought, oh, we'll play a trick on these people. So that the ringleader was Samba. He was the one that said, I'll dress up as a lady, and you go and tell them that I don't know whether I'm pregnant, or I don't know whether I'm going to have a girl or a boy, right? So that was just a foolish stunt, because the sages could immediately understand that these people were actually, that these young princes were being disrespectful. So Narad Muni, once again, he, on behalf of all the sages there, cursed, well, that girl is definitely going to give birth, but it's going to be to an iron rod, which is going to be the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. So that was more or less the fulfillment of Krishna's plan, that this act was put into place, that this action put into place the whole chain of events which was about to happen. And then very quickly the next day, somehow or other, Samba gave birth to what's called a mushti, a little club. So it was an iron club. Sometimes Lord Balaram has a mushti. Today he's got a plough, but he's got this little club. I think he's still got it there. Sometimes he wears that. And mushti means you dong people on the head with it. So So he gave birth to this iron club, and they became very, very afraid that this curse of the sages had come to fruition. So they took it to Ugrasena, who was the king of Dwarka, and after chastising these boys for being so capricious, he said, grind up this club," which is what they did. They ground up the filings, threw them in the sea, and there was a little piece left, a little shaft left, which they couldn't grind up. So, of course, Ramai Maharaj explained how these little iron filings throughout the course of time grew into these sharp reeds, and the Kshatriyas, they become a little bit intoxicated, or not a little bit intoxicated, pretty much intoxicated. Outside the realms of Dwarka, it said actually somewhere in the purport that the Dwarka, there was no alcohol allowed, no intoxications allowed, only when they go outside Dwarka. And they start pick up these reeds, and they didn't realize that they were very, very potent, sharp weapons. And they actually they wiped out the whole dynasty there and then, except for Krishna and Balaram. So this is Samba also perished in it. So that was the purpose that Samba played in this part on as a on this earth, that he had the prowess of Lord Shiva there. So it was a special part that he played. But there was another part that was also played out also, because Krishna, he was a victim of, you can say a victim of that, because the iron filings turn into reeds, and as we know, that sharp point that was left over was swallowed by a fish, was caught by a fisherman by the name of Jara, who opened the fish and saw the sharp point and said, "Oh, this will make a good arrowhead." And with that arrow, once he saw a flash of red in the bushes, thought there was a deer, and he shot it, and it was through Krishna's foot. So there was a part that was played out, because 36 years before that, there was a curse by one of his devotees, Gandhari. She was the mother of all the Kuru princes that perished in the war. And when Krishna came to see her after the war to offer his condolences, she was very how shall we put it, angry, or she was very remorseful, and she said that Krishna actually played a large part in the destruction of her sons. So even though she was a devotee of Krishna, she uttered the curse that 36 years from now, just as my dynasty perished, your dynasty will also perish. And Krishna, because sometimes, the demons can throw a lot of, insults and curses at people, but at Krishna, but he doesn't take any notice of that. But when the devotee says something, he takes notice of the devotee, because he protects his devotees and he protects his devotees' goodwill. So he honoured that statement, the curse that Gandhari made. So this was the part that he played out, that he was shot in the foot, and it was a good time for him to leave. Now, Bhakti Charu Maharaj explains that, first of all, Krishna left the shell behind, right? So that's to prove that Krishna was no longer on the planet. But Krishna is actually spiritual, that he just departed from this planet. There's no birth or death for Krishna. He is immortal. But he did leave the shell behind, and he was pierced through the foot. So to explain it in context, Bhakti Charu Maharaj explains that in the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna was the charioteer, and being out front is the target of all the Kshatriyas who were fighting with Krishna. And so he was pierced full of arrows everywhere. Nearly every day he was just completely pierced with arrows, his whole body, and they'd come back at night and they'd remove all the arrows, put some balm on the body, and next day they'd fight again, that 18-day war. So this time for Krishna just to be shot in the foot, it's not like a fatal shot, but he used this as an opportunity to honour what Gandhari had said, and consequently that was the wounding up of the pastimes. So Prabhupada just finishes here with that statement that one should therefore take great care and attention not to commit an offence at the lotus feet of devotee of the Lord. So he's referring to, Samba and the princess, and it's also, we can take note from Duryodhana insulting Balaram. So Balaram was Krishna's brother, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he was in the role of a Kshatriya. And so the Kshatriyas are very proud of their honour. And they put their honour just like it's an object. They defend their honour. It belongs to them. So if someone's going to take their honour off them, they will fight till death for their honour. They rather have honour than death. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says that, isn't it? For a Kshatriya, dishonour is worse than death. Right? I forget what chapter it is. I think it's in chapter 2. Yeah? So Balaram was very ferocious like that. But in his incarnation as Lord Nityananda, when he was with Lord Chaitanya, he was the opposite, that when he went to preach glories of Krishna's names, asking everybody to chant, and Jagai and Madai, he happened across those two, and they were very, very bad people. And they took offence to the fact that they were asked to chant Hare Krishna, and Jagai picked up a big jug and threw at Lord Nityananda and hit him on the head, and he started to bleed. And he didn't really consider that as a great offence or anything. He just still asking him to chant. But Lord Chaitanya, because blood had been spilled, he came running out, and he was going to vanquish these two rascals. And Lord Nityananda says, well, if you vanquish these two, you have to vanquish everybody, because the whole world in Kali Yuga is like Jagai and Madai. So we know that Lord Nityananda is the Patita Pavana, he's the most merciful of everybody. And so we take example from Lord Nityananda that the Vaishnavas are very, very humble. And Lord Chaitanya also says that humility is the gateway to God consciousness. Trinada Pisa Nityana Tarora Pisa Hishnana. So it's very nice that we actually hear about the days of yore and the glories of the Kshatriyas. This is the history, and it's also history of the universe, and it's about Krishna's pastimes. And the more we understand about Krishna in his totality, the more we can understand with our relationship with Krishna also. So, of course, Krishna is Lord Chaitanya and Radha combined. So in this age, we've been given this Maha Mantra. And how is it? Trinada Pisa Nityana Taror Pisa, more humble than lower than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. That's a state of mind. So this is the state of mind which we try to emulate. So we can learn from the different stories about the different characters, like Duryodhana, that we can see that anger, when you lose it, then there's a distress that follows after that. So it is very poignant remark by Srila Prabhupada that we have to be very, very careful about offences and who we really berate, because actually sometimes when we start to argue and we point the fingers, we've got pointing finger like that, we've got three fingers pointing at us, right? So we have to understand where we come from, that we're all born in the Kali Yuga, and there's a reason why we're born here, that we did something, we're carrying some baggage, some klesha, some what's a klesha called? A klesha is called some inebriation, some offences that we've committed, and we've brought them with us. So we're just trying to become purified. And sometimes we have to understand, put into perspective, who we really are. I know once I still remember this very, very vividly. We're in the Samadhi in Mayapur, and we're talking about the glories of Srila Prabhupada. This is like way back in the last century, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj just seemed to walk in, and he sat down. Of course, we gave the microphone to Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and he made the comment, he said, look, I'm not really qualified to say anything. I'm the most sinful one in this whole room by a long shot. We go, really? You're the most sinful one in this whole room, are you? You know, I'd like you to write down all your sins, you know, and let us know if you can fill one line on the page, you know, whereas you can give us guys a book and we can fill a book with every day that we live, you know, of all of our activities. So that was just the, you know, the humility about him. Just got a couple of minutes. I love telling this story. He told us this story straight after that. He was saying that when he joined up, that he was he was a student, and he was a very astute student, and then he understood the purport of what Srila Prabhupada was trying to explain. So he wanted to join the movement. So he joined in Bombay. But actually, Prabhupada told him to go to Bombay. He'll be there in a few days. This is in Rishikesh, I think, at the Kumbh Mela or somewhere. So he got there before Prabhupada. Nobody knew him, right? He said, I've come to join up. So they put him in the brahmachari ashram with everybody else, and there's this sort of dweeby guy, not much energy, glasses, you know, what's it called, a nerd, you know, one of them sort of like nerdy-looking guys. So anyway, they put him in the kitchen, washing dishes and everything else like that. Then they said, go and get the chickpeas out of the fridge. And it was a 25-kilogram sack in the fridge. So he's lugging the sack, and he couldn't lift it, so he dropped it. And all the chickpeas fell out all over the floor. And, you know, you silly person, you know, you space case and all this, giving him what for, you know, back the armpit. And Srila Prabhupada came 3 days later, and 2 days after that, he initiated him. He gave him Brahman and he gave him sannyas at the same time. And he's one of our foremost scholars. And he was humble about that. He said, yes, I was very bad brahmachari. Very humble. So, you know, he got the mercy. He said, I got the mercy of the devotees. So this is, you know, this is the mood of the devotees. So on that, I think we'll conclude. We've got a couple of minutes. If anybody wants to make a statement or ask a question. Anybody? Are we all done? Haribol, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.